It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Folks, this is Steve Moore, and what you are listening to is the More Money theme song, Money. And we are here to help you make more money. We are here to talk about economics, finance, a little politics, a little Valentine's Day, by the way, for all of the women listening to this show. And I love it when women listen to my show. Happy Valentine's Day. I forgot last year's Valentine's Day. So I've been in hot water with my wife and now for about 11 and a half months. And so I'm going to take her out for a really fancy dinner tonight, and then we're going to this really kind of fun concert tonight. It's called Beatles Love Songs. As most of you know, I'm a big Beatles fan, and so it's going to be a very romantic evening, and I hope you all have a romantic Valentine's Day and night as well. I remember, by the way, that when I was in 3rd grade and had the biggest crush on this cute girl who sat right in front of me in our elementary school, Mary Considine. And she had beautiful long blonde hair, and I used to pull her hair, because I wanted to get her attention. So I pull her hair because I was sitting behind her, and she never liked me for that. She didn't like the fact that I pulled her hair. She didn't get the fact that I just wanted to get her attention. But anyway, I don't think women understand men too well. That probably wasn't a great mating ritual, pulling her hair. I'm in a great mood today, as you can probably tell, because this country is on a great track. And I know a lot of you probably disagree with me on that, but I say, on the right track, wrong track. I know that about half Americans say we're on the wrong track. I say we're on the right track. And I'm looking at these statistics with respect to our economy. And we got 2 great data points just this last few days on the U.S. economy under Donald Trump. And they were both extremely positive. We had a big jobs number that came out on Wednesday. I was on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business News when that story came out, and my jaw just dropped on the air when I heard the number, because everybody's saying, 50,000 jobs. We had well over twice that number. And we have more people working. We have wages rising. We have almost 7 million job openings in this country. So it was a very, very positive result. Some of the past numbers were downward revised, but the fact is that there are jobs out there for those who have skills and need a job. And if you don't have a skill, get one. One of the problems I have with the U.S. economy right now and our education system is we're graduating kids who spent, as much as $200,000 for a 4-year degree from college, and they have a degree in philosophy, or they have a degree in psychology or sociology or ethnic studies or these other mamby-pamby kinds of degrees that nobody wants. None of the employers care if you have an ethnic studies degree. And by the way, I'm not against a liberal arts education. I got a great liberal arts education at the University of Illinois, but you also have to have skills too. And this is the problem with our economy as I see it, is that a lot of the young people don't have the skills that are necessary to fill the jobs of the future. But nonetheless, the jobs are out there. People are getting jobs, and they are paying well. That is to say, the rate of pay is going up faster than inflation right now. Last year, the median income for families in the exact middle of the income spectrum went up by about $2,400, or about $200 a month. That's a nice little raise that they got, and I think it's partly because of the big, beautiful bill, which, by the way, is right now just kicking in. You're starting to see, if you look at your paychecks, you're getting less money withheld by the IRS thanks to the big, beautiful bill, which means that your paycheck is bigger. And if you're an overtime worker, if you are a senior, or if you are, what was it, the overtime and then seniors, and what was the other one, Connor, that he did? He cut the taxes. It was overtime.
No taxes on tips.
And tips, thank you. Yes. And so if you're a tipped worker, you're also getting a tax cut. So feeling very good about that. I'm going to take a break in a minute because I want to bring on David Bahnsen, who's a great financial analyst. And I want to talk to him about what's going on with the economy and the financial markets. By the way, Dow 50,000, pretty darn good, folks. I mean, I just love it. Most of you know when I started 1983 in this business, the Dow was at 1,000. Here we are 40 some years later, and we're at Dow 50,000. If that continues for the next 40 years, we're talking about Dow at 1.5 million. So these are really good. These are really good numbers. Now, I want to mention one other quick thing before we take this break. Economists, Nobel Prize economists, PhD economists from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Northwestern, Duke, all the top economists, not all of them, but many of them, including 11 Nobel Prize winners. When Trump was elected a little over a year ago, they all said, oh my God, the sky is falling. Donald Trump is going to cause huge rates of increases. Tariffs are going to destroy the economy, and his agenda is all wrong, and he's going to run up the deficit with his tax cuts. And so now we look at where we are a year later. What the hell were they talking about? The inflation rate is now down to 2.4%. Now, it's not quite where we want it. We'd like to see that inflation rate down to 2, but 2.4% is a big improvement over when we had 9% under Joe Biden. And so these numbers are getting better. The jobs are out there. The wages are up. The stock market is up. What are people complaining about? And so I'm going to be taking a lot of your calls today. This, by the way, we are live and in color, one of the very few stations that is providing live and fresh information. So do not change your radio dial, folks, because if you change your dial, you're just going to get stale infomercials and so on. We are live and in color, and we do take your callers, 1-800-848-9222. Later on in the hour, please call in because I'm going to ask you, do you share my optimism? I'm saying the economy's good. I'm saying it's going from good to great. I really am. I think we're going to go from good to great. But if you disagree with me, if you're a liberal or a Democrat or a Republican that's facing tough times, call in. Tell me why you don't think the economy is doing well. Because as I look at the evidence, folks, it looks pretty darn good. And money, we're going to be making more money this year. That's why we have the show. All right, when we get back, we'll be talking to David Bahnsen from National Review and a renowned financial expert. Do not change this dial, folks. I hope you're going to have a wonderful Valentine's Day weekend, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Hope you're having a wonderful Valentine's Day weekend. And gentlemen out there, if you haven't gotten your wife a card, or if you don't have a dinner plan with her tonight or flowers, I would urge you to go out and do something for your wife. Last year, I forgot about Valentine's Day, and boy, did I pay the price for that. But this week, tonight, I have big plans. I think everything's going to go wonderful, and I'm feeling good about how that will repair our marriage and get us back on a good track. So, my next guest is a good friend, but also a real financial expert, one of the great financial experts in our country, David Bahnsen. You know David, by the way, if you're a regular listener of the More Money Show, because I have him all the time on, because he is backed by popular demand. People really love what he has to say, and he is among many things, he is a major contributor to National Review magazine. He is the author of many books, including my two favorite, There's No Free Lunch and Full Time. David Bahnsen, thanks again for joining.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
So I want to just start with a very basic question. And I've asked you this before, but for people who have not heard you on my show before, I love your book, There's No Free Lunch. And this has become a colloquialism. What exactly does that mean? There's no free lunch?
It means that economics is about trade-offs, that God made the world with scarcity, and so that what we deal with in the field of economics is allocating resources. So when we go to Starbucks, we have $5 in our pocket. We can have a coffee or we can keep our $5, but we can't do both. Starbucks wants our $5. Starbucks wants our $5. We want the coffee. So we do that trade together, and we both got what we wanted out of it. When people talk about economics as this thing where we need to figure out how everybody can get everything, or that something is to be criticized because people don't get everything, they're arguing that there should be a free lunch. And there isn't a free lunch because the economics is about scarcity. And it was an observation that Milton Friedman made, and I used it as the title of my book.
Right. It would be a wonderful thing if there were such thing as a free lunch and we lived in the Garden of Eden, we could just have whatever we want. But you can only have something if you produce it yourself or someone produces it for you, right?
Well, that's right. And by the way, Steve, you meant it as a figure of speech, but I don't believe that there was total abundance in the Garden of Eden either. I think that God made the world with scarcity,
right?
Because he wanted human beings to go creatively, innovatively, productively allocate resources. Now, of course, in the Garden of Eden, it was a little easier. Christians believe that this thing called sin entered the world, and that gets more theological. But my point is, the world was not created with an abundance of Ferraris, and so we have to go allocate resources to make things and make decisions. And it's politicians that act as if you can have everything. But what people don't realize, and this is the fatal flaw of Keynesianism and some of the 20th century economic ideologies that you've devoted your career to, Steve, central planning and statism and socialism, is it misses the point that there's no free lunch, that even if the state provides something, it can only do it by taking it from something else.
That's right. So I don't want to be too philosophical with you. I want to get down to the nuts and bolts of the economy, but let's stay up on this higher plane for a minute. I'm puzzled, David, why it is that after the evidence of the last 100 years, I was privileged to know Milton Friedman towards the end of his life, and we'd have dinner together now and then, and he used to shake his head at me in kind of sorrow and say, that the most important economic lesson of the last 100 years was that socialism failed virtually. Socialism, communism, Maoism, whatever you want to call it, the isms were always a failure, and that free market capitalism was a success. And then he'd say, but Steve, it sounds like half the country thinks that the solution is more socialism. I mean, we see this in New York. We're seeing it in New Jersey. We're seeing it in other countries. Why? Why is it there's the romantic vision that socialism will work, even though everywhere it's been tried, it's failed?
I think that what Milton was missing in a diagnosis is that the people still crying for socialism are not doing it because they believe that they have this empirical or scientific answer whereby socialism all of a sudden works. Where it comes from is a real spiritual malady. And that's where I can, gladly go back to my Garden of Eden analogy a moment ago. This is where people simply want what others have. And it is not about, we think socialism has worked or we think free markets do not work. It's more a matter of them imposing a utopian view of society onto others. And I will say this, Steve, a lot of people on our side messed up. A lot of free market skiers messed up because and this didn't matter until the financial crisis, but we refused to make our argument for too much of the 20th century for capitalism divorced from a moral foundation. If we argue for capitalism in some sort of atomistic and dehumanizing way, then people won't buy into it. They won't believe that it creates a higher standard of living for others because they're just going to focus on rich people getting richer. What we have to do is focus on how capitalism is ultimately a moral way of thinking that honors the human person, that gives all of us a chance to create the kind of lives we want to have. And I really believe that that's the burden we have to defeat socialism, is not merely make the dollars and cents look better in our spreadsheet than their spreadsheet. We have to point out it does more for the cause of human flourishing.
Well, not just that. I mean, I agree with you 100%, but also if you look at places where you put more power in the hands of the state or politicians, whether it's Mao or what happened in so many of these countries that moved in an aggressive communist socialist direction, the power was abused. And so look at what happened in Cuba. Look what happened in North Korea. Look what happened, and not just in, communist countries, but even the socialist countries. Look what happened in Venezuela. My goodness, David. I mean, when the socialists came in Venezuela was on its way to becoming one of the richest countries. They had amazing assets. And after 20 years of socialism, they became one of the poorest countries.
Well, that's exactly right. And by the way, we can talk about Venezuela. We can talk about North Korea. You mentioned Pol Pot, Vietnam, or Cambodia. But we could also talk about California. Okay,
right. Yeah.
There are Western democracies in which socialism and even a softer version that we'll just call central planning, the role of the state. This is where Friedrich Hayek becomes so important, that he points out that even with the best of intentions, a lot of third world dictators don't have good intentions. Even when a Washington, D.C. or a Sacramento, California bureaucrat has good intentions, that doesn't mean they have knowledge. It doesn't mean they have incentives. And so when you combine what George Gilder taught us about incentives and what Friedrich Hayek taught us about knowledge, I believe that free markets represent a vastly superior system to get better outcomes morally. And then those are the conversations guys like you and I need to keep having.
So I'm talking to David Bahnsen. And by the way, David, we're up against a hard break. I would love, can I keep you overtime and maybe for another section? Because I want to talk to you about where we're headed financially. I want to talk to you a little bit about this big article in the New York Times the other day by Oren Cass. Can we hold you?
Yeah, we can do one more section.
All right. We'll be right back, folks. It's the More Money Show on WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are all over the country. We have affiliates all the way west to Los Angeles and Seattle, and we have affiliates down as far south as Georgia. I think some of the Florida stations get it as well, and of course we go all the way up to Maine. So thank you so much for joining this weekend, this Valentine's Day weekend. Hope you are going to go out with your sweetheart tonight and have a great, great time. So let us continue our conversation with David Bahnsen. If you're just joining us, David Bahnsen is one of the top financial analysts in the country. He knows more about the stock market than just about anybody I know. And David is also the author of many incredible books, including one of my favorites called There's No Such Thing as a Free Lunch. So, David Bahnsen, welcome back. Give me your prognosis. We're over Dow 50,000. You and I have lived through one of the most amazing bull market runs ever. And the question I always get asked, and I'm sure you do too, is can this continue where we're seeing 8 and 9% real rates of return on stocks? I mean, this has been phenomenal. What do you think? Is this, are we coming to the end of the road here, or is this the beginning?
Well, it's a very interesting period, because what you've actually already been seeing for a few months now is something we've been talking about for a while that I refer to as a rotation, not so much a correction. There's been a lot of.
I'm sorry. Did you say rotation?
A rotation, and what I mean by that.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, within the market, you're seeing a lot of the leaders that had been driving returns the last few years, your NVIDIAs and Microsofts, they've been down for a few months now, and yet the market's still going higher because we've rotated into different leaders in the market. And so far this year, energy, consumer staples, healthcare, the telecom, these things have all done a lot better, where a lot of the AI and big tech stocks have not done so well.
And why is that?
Well, they were very expensive, and I think they were overheated. And I think that the market is starting to ask really good questions about how exactly some of the AI story is going to play out. And in the meantime, other stuff was really quite attractively valued, and energy is a great example. You've seen some of the midstream energy stocks up 10, 12% so far this year, even while the Mag 7 is down on the year. So it's been a big rotation.
So as we move to the robotics, artificial intelligence age, and the digital age continues to plow forward, as you know, David, our energy demands will continue to escalate. And so, by the way, as an aside, I think one of the most phenomenal things Donald Trump has done is to repeal this outrageous, what was called the endangerment finding, which basically was going to try to phase out all of our fossil fuels in this country. Even though we get 80% of our energy from fossil fuels, this would have sent the American economy into one of the greatest depressions ever. But as we move forward, we're going to need more energy, not less, a lot more. I've seen estimates that over the next 20 years, our energy demands will as much as triple. So I'm not too surprised that the energy companies are doing well.
And a lot of it is not even just on the demand side, which continues to go higher. We are always going to have more demand for energy. But I am sometimes, critical of certain policies that I don't necessarily agree with President Trump. But energy is the one I always come back to with my friends on the right or even friends on the left as the greatest thing I've seen in both the first term and now in the second term, because the arguing for American energy independence is a must. And President Trump has done that with deregulation, and he's done it with environmental logic that doesn't seek to shut down our ability to be an exporter of natural gas and other resources we have. So he's pro-growth in his perspective on energy. And I think it's very, very important we realize that the Malthusian view of this would extinct civilization.
Yeah, we're not running out of this stuff. And by the way, you're exactly right. We're producing more oil and gas today in America than any other time in history, when 30 years ago, everyone said we were running out of energy. So you're quite right about that. One of the reasons I asked David Bahnsen to come on the show when I talked to him earlier this week was because there was a big story, David. I think you saw it in the Sunday New York Times of last week by a fellow named Orrin Cass. And I don't quite know how you would characterize him, but he has a bit of a following among conservatives. And he was arguing, Orrin, that we don't really need people like David Bahnsen, these financiers, the people who look at the stock market. They're just kind of, parasites on the economy. And that, the rich are just getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. He almost sounded a little bit like Bernie Sanders in his rhetoric, but a lot of conservatives and Republicans are apparently listening to this guy. Is he right?
No, and I would say everything I've said about this argument and what Orrin Cass stands for, even if he weren't going after the financial sector that I happen to work in, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm doing just fine, thank you very much. But what bothers me is that it would really hurt the standard of living of our fellow American people. And what Orrin doesn't understand, even if he has good intentions, is that if you don't have strong financial markets, you can't have a strong economy. And Europe has had weak capital markets for decades, and they've been non-competitive. They have not been able to keep up with American innovation forever. And the fact of the matter is that what we have done is keep unemployment low. Inflation, other than for about a year-long period after COVID, has been relatively low. But most importantly, we've grown the real wages of our workers, and we've done this while having absolutely robust financial markets that innovate, provide new ways to bring capital to their best use. The irony of Orrin's article, which really bothered me, was that everything he's proposing is more government solution.
I know.
And everything he's criticizing came from government intervention.
That's exactly right. And by the way, you made some very important points there. I think one of the most important and one I want to hone in on is that, people don't understand, well, what has Warren Buffett done for the economy? I mean, he doesn't produce anything. Well, what our capital markets do, David, and I've learned this from reading your stuff and other people's writings, is that we are really good at allocating capital to its highest value added source. And so one of the reasons socialism and communism doesn't work is because government is really bad at allocating capital. And the Warren Buffetts of the world, who are really smart, and people like you who say, hey, put your money in company A, not company B, because company A is going to produce things that people want. I think a lot of people don't understand that function. Certainly Orrin Cass doesn't seem to understand it.
No, and then he'll go after private markets like private equity and private credit, right, and not realize that the financial crisis, you had an awful lot of risk in the banking sector, which is very systemic. And what private credit has said is, okay, we're going to do riskier loans still, but the risk will be held by a risk taker, by an investor, not by the whole banking system. So why would someone like Orrin be against that? It's what everybody should want, is for risk takers to take risk and the banking system to have less risk. So his argument fails on its own merits. But ultimately, Steve, we can't. Let me just finish real quick. We can't talk about this without pointing out what's really behind it, which is class warfare.
Which is, yes,
class warfare.
It's
That's really
I call it the greed and envy lobby, which is ironic because they think we're the ones who are, have greed and envy. And yet they are the ones who, instead of, lighting a match, they just want to curse the darkness and curse the people who are sitting in the light. And so I agree with you entirely. There's a kind of hypocrisy of this. But it is a movement, and it is, I'm very worried that the conservative movement, David, is going to be split apart between some of these kind of people think, we need more government intervention in the economy. And incidentally, they did intervene in the economy under Biden. We put $400 billion into green energy. It didn't produce any energy.
No, that's right. And you know what, Steve, it's where people like you and I have to stay consistent. It's a nonpartisan thing. I'm very critical of the stake we took in Intel. Yeah. I'm very critical of talking about not letting Lockheed Martin pay dividends to investors. These are things that we need to avoid. And I understand the intention. Politicians always want to do something. But like when you look at the housing crisis, when you look at things with the environment, when you look at promoting economic growth, the private sector has the resources to do this. And when you leave capital alone, capital will find its best and most efficient use.
Yeah, especially when we have smart people like you and Warren Buffett and others who are advising people about where to put their money. Well, David Bahnsen, you are a national asset. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm taking your calls as we come back. 1-800-848-9222. I want to hear from you. Do you think that the free enterprise system, we need to move past it? I don't. I love the free enterprise system. 1-800-848-9222, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Folks, this is the More Money Show. I'm having a fun time. I hope you are too. Thanks for listening. We have listeners all over the country on this station, so I'm very appreciative of people. I love it when people, call me or text me and say they like listening to the show. I'm kind of new at this game. I always tell people I'm not the smartest or wisest radio talk show host, but I have some of the wisest listeners, and I know that. That's why I'm going to be taking your calls in just 1 minute. But before we do that, I think the United States got ripped off in the Olympics. I don't know if you watched the ice dancing, but it was an outrageous decision by the, quote, judges, unquote. It was a French judge who put the American couple in second place. And anybody who watched it, and if you listen to all the interviews with the people who are experts on the skating, they say it was just robbery. And I wonder, whether this was a French judge just hates Trump and therefore voted against the Americans. I'm just saying it, folks, because no one with an unbiased view would say that that was a just decision. The Americans deserved the gold medal, but I believe they were robbed of it by a French judge who I think just hates America and hates Trump. I just said it. I don't have any evidence of that, but that's my feeling. Okay, let us go to the lines. We have Jeff on from Connecticut. Jeff, thanks so much for joining the More Money Show.
Hi, how are you? I'm
excellent. Thank you.
Good. I don't understand how you can tell us that this economy is in good shape. I could go on forever. The interest on the national debt, we have to borrow money to pay that. Yes. It's nothing if they call it. It is a pyramid scheme. Eventually, it will. Right. You can't keep doing it. And I think the culprit in all of this is central banking, the Federal Reserve. It will never be. It gives government infinite amount of power with the purse strings, and people keep voting. They have no concept of how evil the banking system is. I don't know if evil's the right word. And I'll just tell you one quick thing. I wrote a note to some friends recently. My oldest son, who's about 60, when he was born 60 years ago, my wife and my son stayed in the hospital for 8 days. Okay? The bill for that, I found this check a few years ago. The total bill for that stay was $230.
Wow.
When I sent this to people. But think about the question is why and what caused that? And what caused that is the government having infinite amount of money. So I don't see how we can call this economy being in good shape. I think.
Okay, Jeff, great. Okay, I get your point. And just before I answer one just quick question, what's your solution to this debt issue?
You have to stop it and stop taxing people. And the real solution, I don't know how you end this, is you cannot print money. You have to create something in order, and government creates nothing that I buy.
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to cut you off because it's a good call, but I've got a bunch of other callers waiting. I'm just going to say that the most important thing is to grow the economy so that the economy grows faster than the debt, so that our debt burden goes down over time. I made this point on Larry Kudlow's show earlier that if we can get the economy to grow at 3.5%, the debt will eventually bend the curve down, and also we need some spending control. But I want to get to, I believe next up is Chris. Chris, what have you got for us?
Hey, Steve. Love your show. So I work down on Wall Street, and what my firm does is we rate IPOs, initial public offerings. So to me, as you probably know, that is a pure sign of capitalism is IPO.
Yes.
It's
I love them. Yep.
It's right. Investment. Now, what do you think happened in 2021 to my IPO market, and we almost went out of business? A certain person came into office, and then right after that, the Russians invaded Ukraine, and because of that, we collapsed. We almost went out of business. We rate IPOs,
Yes.
Now, the day Donald J. Trump got reelected, thank God, in 2024, it's amazing what happened in the IPO market. Like everything that was backloaded, companies that wanted to go public, all of a sudden came back out again. And that's a tremendous boon for the economy. And, I told all my friends who don't like Trump, I said, look, I'm voting for him because my business depends on it,
Yeah.
If your business depended on it, you might see things my way. But anyhow, I just thought I'd talk to you about the IPO.
Okay,
market.
Chris, great call, and I'm with you. By the way, thanks for calling in. And I have a family member. One of my sons is in that IPO business too, and same story. He almost went out of business, and then as soon as Trump came in, it was like taking a champagne bottle and shaking it up and taking that cork off, and an explosion of IPOs. Those are more publicly traded companies that Americans can invest in, and we're seeing a big boom in IPOs, which is a good thing because, as we put more and more of our money in the markets, we need more publicly traded companies. Excellent point, Chris. Thanks for your kind words. And finally, before we take a break, I want to squeeze in Eduardo calling all the way from Tampa. Eduardo, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. But, Jeff, you need to move down here in Florida. If the Democrats get back.
I was going to say, what is your temperature there in Tampa today?
It's like 75.
Well, it's 35 here, so I'm in Tampa right now.
Inflation came at 2.4. I just saw the gas here was like 280 something here. This idiot Newsom is over there in Germany. I saw a piece where in Berlin they had a line around the block to get an apartment because it takes forever to get permits. Can you believe that idiot is over there?
Yes.
That's who's
right.
That's who's
representing
us.
Who is over there?
From California.
Yeah, well, you know what? By the way, the best, Eduardo, I have to cut you off because we got to take a break. But the best governor in America is your governor there in Florida, which is exploding in growth. And then, by the way, the worst governor, and I love DeSantis. I think he's been amazing, and so was your former governor. Jeb Bush was a fantastic governor. Florida is absolutely booming, and the state that is hemorrhaging people and hemorrhaging businesses and hemorrhaging capital is California. And so I get so angry when people say, "Oh, we have an affordability crisis. We have an inflation crisis. We have to elect, Gavin Newsom." California has the highest cost of living of any state in the country other than New York. Isn't it interesting? New York and California's costs are exploding because they're run by, socialist and liberal Democrats. So if you want to make America look like California, you should probably vote for Gavin Newsom because we're going to see costs out of control, because that's what liberals do. Folks, we are going to take a break in 1 minute. And when we come back, by the way, got a great show coming up. We've got John Fund, who worked with the Wall Street Journal as an expert on election integrity, which is a big issue now. So do not change that dial. We will be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, that is the age-old question, isn't it, folks? Can money buy you love? I don't know if it can buy you love, but we are here to help you try to make more money. That's why we call this the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining all over the New York area. Appreciate so much. When I'm in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, and people come up to me and say, I listen to the More Money Show and I watch Fox News. Well, it means the world to me. Keep doing that. My wife thinks I've got a big enough ego already. I don't think I have a big ego. She does, but she brings me back down to earth. It's a great economy right now. It really is. And I'm feeling good about this country. I feel really good about the direction of things. I feel like, and I'm not an apologist for Trump all the time. I love the guy. I hope to go see him this weekend in the Oval Office, but he is, he does a lot of great things. Sometimes I roll my eyes, says things or does things I don't like. But what he has done on the economy has been absolutely astonishing to me. To look at it's night and day, the difference between what happened when Joe Biden was president and when Trump was president. By the way, I would say it's day and night and day, because remember, Trump was president for 4 years before Biden, and that was a boom period too until we got hit with COVID. I want to go back to one quick point. And by the way, coming up is John Fund on this show, who is an amazing analyst of what's happening with all this election fraud and why is it Democrats are holding up election integrity. I don't understand it, but he's going to explain this to us. But we're talking, if you're just joining the show, we were talking earlier about what do our capital markets do? Why do we have capital markets and what function do they serve? And I was making the point that what they do is they allocate the capital. This is why our capitalist system works so well. We do this better than any other country. And when I say we, I mean the people in our financial markets and the people who are investors like most of you, because you probably wouldn't be listening to the show if you weren't an investor. We do a very good job of saying, okay, let's say there's a lemonade stand over here, and on the other side of the road, there's another lemonade stand. And while one of the lemonade stands makes really good lemonade at a really good price that people want to pay. And the other one makes, sour lemonade. It doesn't taste good. It's going nowhere. What the capital markets do, and this is just a very dumbed down version of what our capital markets do, is they say, hey, invest in Joe's lemonade, not Bill's lemonade, because Joe's lemonade is where it's at. That's where the future is. It's going to become a franchise. It's going to go da-da-da. And that's what happens. And that's what we're so good at. Whereas when politicians try to do that and say, oh, we want to invest in Intel, or we want to invest in this company and that company, it does not work. They always make the wrong decisions. And by the way, even Donald Trump, sometimes he says, oh, we want the government to invest in this company. No. Politicians are terrible financial analysts. We're good at it. Not when I say we, I don't mean me personally. I just mean our economy is excellent at that. And that's one of the reasons that we've seen such a bull market expansion and people's 401k plans are up so much. And so God bless capitalism. God bless what Trump is doing to make our economy better. I mentioned earlier, and I just want to say this again, getting rid of this climate change, crazy war on American energy regulation. That was one of the most important decisions a president has made in modern times. By doing this, thank you, Donald Trump, you are going to save our economy trillions of dollars of excess cost. All these crazy climate change people said, shut down oil, shut down nuclear power, shut down natural gas, shut down coal. Well, they want to shut down 85% of our energy. I wouldn't have this radio show if we didn't have energy. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have cars. We would have nothing. If you want to destroy the free market system, get rid of our energy. And if you think that you can run a $30 trillion economy that makes everything from steel to cars to the cloud, which uses enormous amount of energy, you think you can do that on windmills? You're smoking something. So anyway, Trump has the right equation. We're producing more oil, gas, and coal than ever before, which is a great, great thing. We're bringing energy prices down. I know utilities are still too high, but you're not going to be able to heat your home with the windmills. It just ain't going to work. Okay, folks, when we come back, I am going to bring on my good friend John Fund, who is a colleague of mine, been a long time colleague of mine, and we're going to talk about stealing elections, because that's something one party does very well.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. We are back. This is the More Money Show. Thank you for carving out some of your time on this Valentine's weekend to listen to the show. Very much appreciate it. We have great ratings thanks to smart people like you. Before I get to John Fund, who is on the line and is a good friend and we've got a lot of great discussion items for John Fund, but I want to just mention something. This is kind of personal, but I think most of you will relate to this, that a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine died this week, Ed Crane. Ed Crane was the founder of the Cato Institute, which is the most important free market libertarian think tank in the world. Ed Crane founded it some 40 or so years ago. By the way, both John Fund and I worked for Ed Crane. He was iconic. He was a lover of liberty. He was big into the whole issue of Social Security personal accounts, which we got to do is convert it into a personal account system. He was into slashing government spending. He was a big advocate of term limits, drug legalization, health savings accounts. And he was just an amazing guy. And really, I learned so much from him about why limited government is so critical to our economic health and our freedom. And John Fund, thanks for joining. You knew Ed Crane, I think, longer than I did.
I think I was the second intern at the Cato Institute in San Francisco.
Wow.
So I go back.
Wait, hold on, John. Did you say it was founded in San Francisco?
Yes, it was in San Francisco until
I didn't
1981.
Know that.
And I was there the summer of 1980.
Wow.
So it spent 2 years in San Francisco before it moved.
So what did you think of Ed?
The Ayatollah Crane is how we called him. He was imperious. He was decisive. He ran a tight ship, but the ship was a fast cutter, cutting through the waves towards, I think, new insights and new understanding of liberty. And I'll tell you, if the Cato Institute didn't exist, we would have to invent it. It's not always practical, but it's always consistent, and that's rare in Washington.
Well, it achieves so much in terms of really pushing us more towards, free markets. And Milton Friedman, by the way, one of the greatest free market economists who ever lived, was a big fan of Ed Crane and the Cato Institute.
Well, I think when we revisit Washington in the next 10 years, assuming the current developments continue, we'll be seeing a lot of Ed Crane's projects come to fruition, especially
I hope you're right.
Accounts and personal retirement accounts.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that, John Fund. Okay, well, I too am a great admirer of his. I worked for 9 years at Cato, and he taught me so much about freedom, about politics. Was a very wise guy. And by the way, he was a bipartisan antagonizer of both parties, right, John? You know that.
Well, if you were supported corporate welfare while you were opposing welfare spending, he would be on your case saying, we want a government that provides a level playing field under the rule of law and no subsidies for anyone as much as possible.
So John Fund, by the way, is who I'm having this conversation with, and I neglected to identify John. I think almost all of you know John Fund. He's was many years as the key political writer at the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Still writes for the Wall Street Journal all the time. Is also a member of the National Review, a contributor to National Review. He works with me at Unleash Prosperity. And by the way, if you're not getting our Unleash Prosperity hotline, which John is one of the editors of, please sign up. It's just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up, and it's absolutely free. And we could not get that daily post out every morning if it were not for John's amazing contributions to that. So he also is one of the experts in the country about election integrity. And that's, John, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. We have this brouhaha going on in Washington about how we make sure that the people are voting are people who should be voting, and making sure that people who should not be voting are not voting. And yet there's all sorts of resistance to putting up any kind of safeguards to make sure that our elections are fair and accurate.
Well, it is one of the most curious contradictions in Washington. Over 75% of Democrats, over 80% of African Americans, over 80% of Latinos, over 80% of Asian Americans all support having someone show a photo ID at the polls when they vote. And almost as many support proving your citizenship when you register to vote. But yet 99.5% of House Democrats voted against it last week. Why the contradiction? Look, I can't read minds, but I think that I think a lot of Democrats, both either explicitly or implicitly, know that in some of our major cities and in some of our backwater jurisdictions in blue states, there's a lot of hanky-panky going on behind the curtain they don't want to talk about or stop.
So, by the way, I neglected to mention that John Fund and my good friends, Hans van Spakovsky, have a book out called Our Broken Elections. And boy, are they broken. Are they broken? I mean, do you think we're making progress in terms of having more secure and safe elections, John, or are we moving in the opposite direction?
Well, look, I think Donald Trump sometimes makes some wild, unsubstantiated charges, but he's right on the fundamentals. We do need a cleanup of our system, especially our voter rolls, where 15 to 20% of the people on the rolls don't belong there or are dead.
15 to 20%?
I would say on the average, because our rolls are so seldom, it depends on the state, but on the average, I'd say our rolls are really, no marketer would ever use those rolls to try to sell a product.
So hold on, John. I want to define, what does it even mean? What does voter roll mean? What does that mean?
The registration list that you have to be part of in order to vote. In our country, you can't just show up. You have to register to vote first.
Right.
And that's the list of people who are eligible to vote.
And so why you're saying they're not accurate, or?
Well, people are dead. They're not removed from the rolls. They move out of state, which means they're not eligible to vote in that state. They are homeless and don't have a fixed address. They're ineligible to vote because they're non-citizens, but there's almost nothing preventing people today from registering to vote if you're a non-citizen. Or they don't even exist. They're just names that have been added to the rolls, and people vote in their place or can vote in their place.
And so then, of course, we have this new phenomenon called mail-in voting, and that probably makes it even more difficult to make sure that the person who's filling out the ballot is actually the John Q. Wilson who they say it is.
Well, there was a big controversy because the FBI raided the Atlanta, Georgia voter registration office and took away a bunch of records. And that's a highly unusual procedure, but it's because in 2020, there was real evidence that there were mail-in votes that were cast that weren't valid. And that was never properly looked at, never properly examined by a court. I don't believe that Donald Trump won all 6 close states in 2020, but I do believe he probably won Georgia and probably Arizona too. And I think if we can get to the bottom of that and actually prove that those elections were changed improperly, I think that we'll have a much better case to make to independent and other voters that we have to clean up our elections at a minimum. So if you take money from the federal government to help run your election systems, you should be required to clean up your voter registration rolls, and that's part of what this bill in Congress that was voted on last week would have done.
So I wanted to ask you about that, John, because I don't follow this that closely. You do. So what's the name of the bill? The SAFE Act? What was it called?
SAFE Act.
Okay, the SAFE Act. So what would you?
An acronym for keeping America safe from for voter integrity.
Okay, so let's go through it what does the SAFE Act do for people who don't understand elections? I'm kind of dumb on this stuff. So explain very simply what it does.
In federal elections, where you're voting for president or Congress, you have to show a photo ID at the polls. Every other country.
By the way, stop right there. A voter ID at the polls. I mean, who could be against that?
Well, about 14 or 15 states still don't have that. And in fact, in California, it is illegal for any election worker to ask someone for an ID. In other words, even if
hold on, John, this doesn't make any sense to me. You mean somebody can just show up and they say, I'm Bill Smith, and without any identification?
But they could say they're a Bill Smith on the voting rolls who hasn't voted in 20 years and was 80 years old the last time he did vote. They can do that, but it's against the law in California to ask that person for an ID to prove that they are who they say they are.
Well, that's just, I'm sorry, I'm astounded by that. So you're saying virtually every, you said 99.5%. Was there some Democrat who voted for that?
One, an Hispanic congressman from Texas on the border area who certainly knows that there's voter fraud in that area.
So 1 out of 210 Democrats.
1 out of 213.
Now, John, as you know, because I read the newspapers and listen to the radio and watch TV, you're for Jim Crow laws. John Fund, you want voter ID. You're for Jim Crow.
The only problem is there's zero evidence that these photo ID laws have prevented anyone from voting, and that explains why 75 to 85%.
Hold on. Hopefully it prevents people illegally from voting.
Well, I'm talking about people being disenfranchised, being people legitimate voters who are blocked from voting.
Right.
And the reason that 75 to 85% of African Americans and Latino Americans support photo ID is they know that they've been allowed to vote. They know they have IDs, and they think it's preposterous and frankly condescending for liberals to say, oh, we can't trust people to get an ID for themselves. We have to coddle them and treat them like they're fragile creatures. That's very demeaning, and I think that it does a disservice to people who want to vote and know how to vote, and they vote in great numbers. In fact, in many of these states that have photo ID laws, the percentage of minorities who vote are higher than the percentage of the whites who vote.
Well, John, I mean, look, you know this. You've written about this in your book. I mean, you need an ID to spot anything these days. To get on an airplane, to go into a sports stadium, to when you use your credit card, you have to show a voter an ID. When I go to a hotel now, you have to show your
Steve,
ID.
But
you're saying you can't.
Steve, the members of Congress who voted against this bill had to use a photo ID in their electronic voting machine to cast a vote against it.
I mean, folks, I have steam coming out of my ears right now. I am so angry about this. And by the way, I think it is racist for them to say, oh, well, Hispanics and blacks, they can't get a voter ID. I mean, that's so patronizing.
Actually, the law says if you're already registered to vote, you don't have to prove your citizenship. It's only new people who are registered to vote. And you can prove your citizenship a variety of ways, including with a government ID, a tribal ID, a passport, a birth certificate, which you can now easily get over the internet. There's an electronic system that has access to all birth certificates around the country. So it's preposterous that it's a barrier to voting. And I think that eventually we're going to have this law. We already have it in about 30 states that require photo ID. And I think that if they want to be on the losing side of history, I think it will just prove to people that they obviously are extreme. They obviously don't represent their own voters, and people can draw their own conclusions about why they would oppose such a simple safeguard against illegal voting.
Well, I'm going to give you my conclusion. By the way, I'm talking to the great John Fund, who is one of the world's expert on elections. What other conclusion is there than that they want people to be able to legally vote because they think that's a way for them to win elections? I mean, that's quite an accusation, but I don't understand why 99% of them would say, oh, you don't need an ID to vote. Oh, yes, you do need an ID to check into a hotel. You do need an ID to get on an airplane. You do need an ID when you go to the store and use your credit card, but you don't need it when you vote?
As I said, they're on the losing side of the argument, and frankly, the more that they make these preposterous arguments, the more they expose themselves as self-interested power seekers.
Well, so where do we stand now, John? Is this dead for now, or what do you think?
It goes to the Senate, and you need 60 votes to break a filibuster in the Senate. And I think that the Republicans in the Senate are going to have to come up with a very good idea. Let's have an old-fashioned filibuster where, you can block a bill from coming to the floor for a vote, but you have to do it standing up, talking until you're too tired to sit down, and then someone else has to take your place. And I think that if they want to filibuster this and basically use their preposterous arguments against it, I think that would be one of the great educational civic experiences Americans could ever have. And let's force them to talk down this bill rather than just declare a filibuster and not have to defend it.
I agree entirely. And I know some of my friends at Wall Street Journal editorial board think it's a bad idea, but I agree with you. The more light we can shine on this issue, the better. John, we got a minute left. You give us the update on what's happened with this outrageous teacher strike in California, where hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids were not being able to get educated because the unions had shut down the schools. I think you told me this morning that the school districts caved into the union.
Yes, the unions had coordinated strikes all over the state at the same time that their contracts were expiring. San Francisco was the biggest city to have a strike. They finally had a resolution today. Basically, the school district gave them a 9% raise automatically, enormous concessions on health care benefits and other things. Basically, if you hear a teachers union say, we're doing this for the children, we're striking for the children, no, they're doing it for the adults. It's one of the most selfish things I've ever seen. They abandoned those kids. In fact, they even argued to the parents, you shouldn't let your kids do homework because that will mean that this strike might not work.
By the way, they even said you could be a scab. If you're teaching your kids at home,
it would be the equivalent of crossing a picket line if you let your kids do homework at home.
It's outrageous.
While the schools are closed.
I'm just angry, John, that they caved in. I mean, the San Francisco teachers are some of the highest paid teachers in the country,
and they also have benefits that would make everyone in your audience blush. Benefits that we haven't seen for years in the private sector, including fully paid pensions at age 60 after only, 30 years of service, and health care for you and your dependents forever.
Well, and also, John, look, I'm all in favor of paying great teachers more money. I've always said great teachers are worth their weight in gold. The problem is you can't fire in California the bad teachers.
You can't also have merit pay where the good teachers are paid more than the ones who basically sit on their thumbs.
Why? Why don't they have merit pay?
Because the union represents all of its members, including many members that are mediocre and don't want to be challenged at work.
Well, John, you're not cheering me up. I mean, thank you, by the way, for joining the show. That's the great John Fund from, formerly from the Wall Street Journal, now works with me at Unleashed Prosperity and, from National Review. But I'm angry about both these issues, folks. I mean, the teachers unions do not care about the kids. It's that simple. And the idea that you can just vote, anybody can walk up and vote without a voter ID. And by the way, I just don't understand it. And the only conclusion I can come to is they want people who are not eligible to vote. Okay, folks, we will be right back. I'm going to bring on my friend Robert Wolf, who is a Democrat, because we're a nonpartisan show, and we're going to talk about the economy with Robert Wolf. He's the former chairman of UBS. He ran one of the most important banks in the country. He's a good friend of mine. He and I appear on Fox News all the time together. So do not go away. This is WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC and some affiliated stations throughout the country. Thanks so much for joining on this Valentine's Day weekend. I hope you got your sweetheart some chocolates or a card or taking them out for dinner. I have to do that with my wife because I missed Valentine's Day last year, so I'm going to get out of hot water by taking her out to a nice dinner tonight. My next guest is Robert Wolf. Many of you who watch Fox News know that Robert is a contributor, a frequent contributor on Fox News and Fox Business News. He also was the former chairman of UBS Bank, and so is one of the smartest financial people I know. He is a Democrat. I am a Republican. We like to spar, and we do it in a friendly way. Robert Wolf, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Steve.
So let's get right down to it, Robert.
Always enjoy talking to you.
Me too. So I'm going to get right down to it. I started out the hour by saying I think we've got a very healthy economy. I think Trump deserves a lot of credit for this. I'm not saying everything's perfect, but I think things are headed in the right direction. On the other hand, you're seeing polls show that a lot of Americans are upset about the affordability issue. They don't feel like things are going in the right direction. What is your take off your political hat for a minute? What is your overall take on where we stand financially and economically as a country right now?
So, Steve, thanks for asking. And I like to believe when I talk about the economy as a real capitalist, I try to only use facts. And obviously, there's a few curves in there that could go one way or the other. It feels like the glass is half empty or half full to me, depending what you want to talk about. Certainly, January numbers on both CPI and jobs were strong. They came in higher and lower than expected, and those are two good bookends. I think 2025 was a tough year. If you kind of really look at it and you see some of the revisions for jobs, and I know revisions happen every year, but for the most part, we averaged about 15,000 new jobs a month. That is not a good number. That is the very low end of
it's a low number, definitely.
It's a low number. So you have to look at where revisions are. And so, jobs were bumpy at best in 2025. So we can only hope that 2026 is much better. The unemployment rate went up, but certainly lower than I would think a lot expected. I think when it comes to costs,
there's no question when it comes to, energy prices, especially oil and gasoline at the pump. Those are some of the absolutely strongest issues for the president. But I could argue the flip side. When you get your monthly bills, or when you're looking at utility costs, natural gas is up, 15%, maybe 10%. I don't want to exaggerate. I think it's 9.8 exactly for the year. Electricity, 6%. And of course, depends where you live. Coffee prices up 18%, beef up 17%. So healthcare up 13%. So I would say many of the things that are front and center on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for you and your family feels expensive. So yes, affordability is an issue. And so, and then the other thing is, and this is where, you and I have been on the same page. I'm probably a little more extreme on my thoughts. Liberation Day to me was a disaster because I have never been supportive of a. By
the way, just hold on, Robert, just to remind people, because a lot of people who don't follow politics, Liberation Day, remind people what was that?
Yeah, so Liberation Day was when the president, which is what was part of the reason he was elected, was to put tariffs on a lot of the foreign countries that we trade with. And my approach, and I've been consistent, whether it's Biden or Trump 1.0 or Obama 1.0 or 2.0, I have only supported tariffs from a blunt perspective, whether it's on tires or steel dumping or solar panels, never across the board, meaning I would never think we should put a tariff on bananas that we don't actually have here and we have to import, or coffee, or certain things that make it more expensive. And I have been arguing since April that it is a tax on the consumer. And I believe this administration has been gaslighting the American public by saying it's not, because we just came out with year-end numbers where a nonpartisan think tank came out that 92% of all tariffs have been paid by the importer, which are the U.S. companies that bring it in, and or the consumer. 92%. Which is what economists would have expected. Yeah. And Steve, my last point, and therefore it became a tax on the consumer by about $1,000 per year per family. So, so let me respond to that. Affordability is front and center.
Okay, so those are all good points. Let me respond and then see what you have to say about this. So certainly I agree that if you put a tax on something, a lot of times that tax is going to filter right on through to the final consumer. That's, by the way, when I've been against high business taxes, because businesses will just pass those taxes on. And I'm not saying about this but some of the people on the left are kind of hypocritical. They say, well, the tariff is going to be paid by the consumer, but these other taxes are not. And eventually they do filter onto the consumer. And so you are right about that. On the other hand, Trump did the big, beautiful tax bill. And so that bill actually reduced people's taxes. And so when you take the two things combined, and I'd like your views on this because I've been thinking about it myself and I'm not sure what to make of it. But if you look at like the most recent numbers that came out from the Congressional Budget Office, what has happened is that tariff revenues were up, Robert, but other tax revenues like corporate tax revenues and some of the individual income tax revenues were down. So in other words, what Trump was doing essentially was almost trading the higher tariffs for the lower income taxes. And I would be sort of in favor of that, but what is your thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me that's a regressive tax. And so I wouldn't be in favor of that because that hurts middle America and lower income America more than it's going to hurt me or you. I'm a wealthy guy. Whether I get
except hold on, but
let me just finish.
If a business is hold on, we need employers though. I mean, if you're taxing employers, they're going to hire fewer workers, aren't they?
Wait, time out. We were just talking about the tariff part versus the business. By the way, I'm for lower taxes. Okay, I'm not sure I would have gone to 18 or 21%, but I'm not looking for a business tax to be higher. And by the way, you and I once agreed on a minimum global tax at like 15 or 18%, so people didn't divert employment overseas. So, by the way, you and I have been somewhat similar on this, although I don't believe in trickle down, you do. But my point is a little different. I was not talking about, what I was trying to get at is I think that's a regressive tax. My point is what we're seeing in employment is that because of maybe artificial intelligence or skilled workers or whatever it may be, we're seeing productivity do better. We're not actually seeing employment do better. So we're not sure exactly how it's impacted the worker. We know in manufacturing, there's 100,000 less manufacturing jobs. So we know that, it has, I would argue with blue collar workers, it's gone the other way. So I think it's like I said, I could argue the glass is half full or half empty. Today I'm arguing half empty, but, I could argue the other side too.
So let me ask you a couple more questions. I'm talking to Robert Wolf, who you see him on Fox News all the time. He was with UBS. By the way, did you ever have an official, I know you've been a longtime friend and advisor to President Obama. Did you have some kind of official position in his administration?
So I had 3 presidential appointments under him on the President's Economic Advisory Board under Paul Volcker, on their Export Council when we did trade, and on their Jobs Council. And then the last 2 years of Biden's administration, I was advising the Pentagon. So definitely played heavily at the intersection.
Got it. Did you say this commission was under Volcker?
Yeah, the first 2 years under President Obama, I worked for Paul Volcker. And
what did you think of him?
I love Paul Volcker. He's one of my close friends. I was obviously at his funeral. He is, one of my idols. I was probably one of those,
Mine too.
I was a Wall Street guy in the 80s, so I was a Reagan Democrat, as you would call it.
Right. So, by the way, Paul Volcker, for those who don't follow this stuff as closely as Robert and I do, he was the one who really drained the inflation out of the system in the 80s. And he was actually a Jimmy Carter appointee, but I think he was one of our great Fed chairmen.
I think he was the greatest of all time. He brought inflation from 25% when we had inflation, and during the time of the Iran scandals that we had in Russia, where gas went off the charts. I mean, you could say he single-handedly taught everyone how to battle inflation while wanting a strong dollar.
So we're going to do a speed round because there's a bunch of things I've been wanting to ask you about. So just quick answers up. Are we going to face another banking crisis like we faced in 2008?
Well, I was at the Lehman crisis that weekend as one of the 8 executives running UBS. The answer is no, because leverage in the system at the banking sector has been taken down incredibly much lower, from 30 times down to like 12 to 15. So no.
So safe. The banks are pretty safe, right? Okay. Second question. You didn't give me your prognosis on where the economy is headed now, where we're at today versus where do you think we'll be a year from now? Would you be buying stocks? Do you think that this is what do you see it?
Yeah. So let me just be clear. I don't think we're going to hit the 15% GDP growth that the president thinks. And
you're not that bullish.
I know it was a friendly, I'd call that an advertisement between my friend Larry and the president. But listen, I think if we hit 3 to 3.5% GDP growth, I think we'll feel pretty good, especially if inflation, I think we can because, listen, foreign direct investment, it's not at the president's numbers, but it seems like there's real foreign direct investment coming in. It feels to me that some of this artificial intelligence and productivity should really impact, hoping wages go up. I mean, I have concerns, so I would be happy at 3.5, partly because I'm hoping inflation, stays below 3, which it feels like it will to me. But, we have an incredible amount of geopolitical risk that could impact us. So I would say I'm bullish on the economy, but I'm probably not as bullish on jobs. And that's why probably, if I was the Fed, I would be reducing rates. I have more concern about the job market than I do inflation right now.
And what do you think of our Trump's new appointment for the Federal Reserve Chairman?
Huge fan of Kevin Warsh. I think he's smart. I knew him, a bit during the Lehman crisis when he was working, at the Fed. He's a sharp guy. He's probably going to be a little more hawkish than Powell, and certainly than maybe.
Hold on. Just because we have a lot of non-economists. What does that mean?
About that.
Hawkish means he's going to fight inflation.
He'll care a little more about inflation and a strong dollar, and so he would probably gear towards raising rates than lowering rates. But I think he'll have I think who's ever the Fed chair will have a real eye on the jobs market and the impact of artificial intelligence on the jobs market.
Okay. And then finally, talking to Robert Wolf, who is, one of the smartest Democrats I know. But I want to ask you about a nonpartisan issue. It's just, we do see this incredible revolution coming in technology, in robotics, artificial intelligence. It's just astonishing how quickly it is changing our world. And it is going to dramatically change the way, Robert, we work, what kind of professions. I've said on the show, 15 years, we probably won't have too many truck drivers left. We have 2 million truck drivers. Trucks will be automated. Factories are going to be automated, et cetera. So how do you see that playing out for the American workers? You said, we lost manufacturing jobs next year, but a lot of factories will be automated with robots. Is it a good thing or bad thing? How do you see it playing out?
Well, I'm incredibly nervous because I think that the job market is going to be very barbelled. We're going to have junior people come in to do a check and balance on what artificial intelligence can do. And I think we'll have at the senior level people really setting the vision and the tone for the business. So I'm really nervous about this, what I would call this mid-level, jobs, which is disproportionate. The largest number of jobs is mid-level. So I'm very nervous. I think we're going to have higher productivity, and I think it's going to absolutely disintermediate a lot of jobs. So I'm concerned, and I am only hopeful that artificial intelligence is regulated. I've also been a supporter of regulating social and digital media, similar to news.
So that is Robert Wolf. He is Robert. I need to make you a regular on this show because we really appreciate your insights.
I'd love to
Robert
come
Wolf.
on. I'm a fan of your owner. I'm a fan of you and Larry. Happy to come on. Well, Robert, you and I have been sparring for over a decade, so we're still both.
Has it been that long? It's amazing. Well, you're my favorite Democrat, my friend. And I know you're Larry Kudlow's favorite Democrat too. Folks, we'll be right back. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls, 1-800-848-9222. My producer in New York says we have 2 open lines. I want to hear from you. Do you agree with me or do you agree with Robert Wolf? Or are you in the middle of this debate? 1-800-848-9222. And we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC and other affiliated stations throughout the country. So thanks so much for joining on this Valentine's Day weekend. You better have gotten your sweetheart some chocolates or a card or take her or him out for dinner. I learned the lesson of not doing that last year where I had to sleep on the couch for a couple of nights. But I wanted to talk about a few things. By the way, we have 2 people on the line and we have 2 open lines, 1-800-848-9222. If you'd like to join in, we have time for 1 or 2 more callers on top of the 2 that are in the queue already. But here's one I want your reaction to. 6 out of 10 Americans say Democrats have moved too far to the left. Too far to the left. I think they have. In fact, I can't believe it's only 6 out of 10. I mean, when you see what's happening with Mamdani in New York, when you see what's happening out in California, you see the high cost of living in Connecticut, in my home state of Illinois, Chicago's a mess, New York's a mess, San Francisco's a mess. I do think the Democrats have moved too far to the left. And most of you know, if you're a regular listening to the More Money Show, I am not a rah-rah Republican. I am not. I mean, I do vote Republican most of the time, but that's mostly because I think it's the lesser of two evils. And look, I was a big fan of Bill Clinton. I thought Bill Clinton did amazing things for our economy when we had a Republican Congress. But I don't see the party having any kind of pro-growth, pro-America, pro-business agenda. I really don't. I think it's all about redistribution and soak the rich, and nothing about innovation and making an American economy healthier. We need better schools, obviously, and all that's happening with the Democrats is just pay them more money, pay the teachers more money. I'm for paying teachers more money. I know that we have teachers listen to the show. I know we have excellent teachers listen to the show. My attitude is pay great teachers more money, pay a lot more money, pay good teachers more money, and get rid of bad teachers. We do that in every other profession. Bad employees get fired. You can't fire a teacher in New York. You can't fire a teacher in New Jersey. You can't fire a teacher in California, Illinois. It's almost impossible to do it. And so we got men and women in front of classrooms that are incompetent, and that is child abuse, in my opinion. And so that is how I feel about our schools. We have to have better schools if we're going to continue to be the world economic superpower. So let us go to the phone lines. I see we have Gracie on the line. Gracie, thanks so much for calling.
Oh, hi, Steve. Listen, I was listening to Richard Wolff. I'm glad you qualified it.
It's Robert Wolff. Robert
Wolff. The smartest Democrat. That put him down a few notches, in my estimation. I didn't like what he said, everything.
Okay,
I was a teacher.
Hold on, Gracie. Gracie, what did you disagree with?
All right, what I disagreed was this. He poo-pooed the 15% what Trump said. I was a teacher, I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother. If you don't raise the bar high enough, if we could get to 7, it's still better than his saying we'll only get to 3, and then people won't try to get to 3. Yeah. You have to always raise
Hold on, Gracie, hold on. When you say 7, you mean 7% growth?
Yes. I'm just saying. Well, I was following along. I know the time is short, so I leave out words. But the point is, you have to work hard. You got to look at the whole picture. Yes. And the reason the New Jersey maybe went and New York goes and this and that is that the worker bees that are paying the taxes and could move are the ones that are moving out. So pretty soon these blue states are not going to have enough taxes to give it away to everybody.
I know it's a redistribution. Now, Gracie, I got to ask you one last question before I let you go up. Did you hear my discussion with John Fund about the SAVE Act, which requires people to show an ID before they vote? Are you for? What do you think? Of
course I'm for it, because it's absolutely ridiculous. If I wasn't afraid of going to jail when I go to California, I'll be there in November, I feel like going and pretending something and voting, but I'll be the one they'll put me in jail.
So why do you think, Gracie, that the Democrats all voted against voter ID?
Because I believe, I'm not a Republican either. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm looking for I look at the issues one by one. And what it is because they want to keep in office. All right?
Yeah.
They want, the dumber you are, it's what is the Peter principle? You raise to the level of your incompetence. Look at Schiff. All right?
Okay, Gracie, I got to cut you off because I got to get to my last caller.
I know. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Ernest, what do you got?
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of things. First of all, this is a country of law, and we're under foreign law. And under American rule of law, there can be no unions. And you can look that up under U.S. Code 7311, loyalty and striking. You can't have a union inside the most perfect union called this country. So 7311, loyalty and striking, there cannot even be unions. So people don't know that the law is ours and the law protects us, because Monday is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And he said the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. And that's what we're under. Democrats pervert the Constitution by speaking King's English, not American English. And what is that?
Ernest,
italics.
I'm up against the clock. Great point. And I'm glad you brought up, I forgot to mention this. I apologize, folks, that Monday is President's Day, where we celebrate two of our greatest presidents, obviously Abraham Lincoln, and who I believe was our greatest president and our first president, George Washington. You know, people back then wanted George Washington to be a king. He was so popular in that era. He was favored by 80% of the public because he had helped, as General Washington, us win the Revolutionary War. But he said no to the people. No, you don't want a king. That's what we escaped Europe away from. We don't want a monarchy. We want a president and a representative form of government so the people's voices are heard. And he, by the way, he ran for 2 terms. He could have run for more terms. He was so popular back then, but he said, no, president should serve for just 2 terms and we don't want a permanent, president of this country. And what an amazing, president he was. He warned of too much government power. He was one of our founders. He helped write the Constitution. He's my favorite president. But by the way, I think Ronald Reagan was one of our great presidents. And I also think that the president we have right now is pretty good. And last thing, I've got 1 more minute left. I am supposed to see the president this week, although his schedule changes all the time. And don't tell him this. This is top secret. But I'm going to bring in a portrait of Calvin Coolidge, who I believe is also one of our 7 or 8 greatest presidents. He gave us the roaring 20s. He cut the top tax rate from 75 to 20% and caused an economic boom. And the last time I saw the president, he said, he showed me all the portraits of the presidents he had in the Oval Office. And I said, "You're missing Calvin Coolidge, Mr. President." He said, "Steve, was he a great president?" I said, "Hell yes, he was a great president." So don't tell him, but I'm going to bring him a portrait of Calvin Coolidge, also one of our great presidents, but clearly Abraham Lincoln and George Washington were 2 of our greatest, and it is right and proper that we should celebrate them. Folks, have a great President's Day weekend. Don't forget about your sweetheart for Valentine's Day, and we'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel, on the More Money Show next week.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Want to see your brand on TV? Roku Ads Manager makes it easy to launch targeted ad campaigns in minutes, track results in real time, and drive on-screen purchases with just a click of the Roku remote. Get a $500 match on your first $500 spent with code ROKU500 at ads.roku.com. That's code ROKU500 at ads.roku.com. Terms apply.